Welcome, my darling pretties, to our Beyond the Dawn of Business podcast for pretty, empowered female entrepreneurs. It's time to step into your power, pretties. Lift each other, support the squad, and choose a life filled with the autonomy and freedom to live your dreams. I'm your host, Dawn Beth, owner and founder of Beyond the Dawn digital business brand and agency. My coffee is hot and my eyelashes are on, so we are ready to go. Hi, and welcome to today's episode. So today I really want to discuss identity. And the reason why I want to talk about identity today is because it's really, really important to those of us who are out there in the world showing up, being visible, and giving ourselves the opportunity to be seen by other people that we want to work with, people that we don't want to work with, people who are just general public, because we do that for our businesses, we do that for our purpose, we do that for our higher meaning, and it's important to us that we do it. We know we need to do it. So there are many, many, many hundreds of thousands, millions of people who now feel comfortable, for instance, making a podcast with their emotional feelings, their opinions, their thoughts, their tips, their hints, their expertise, their life stories, and putting them out on the internet for everybody, for literally anybody with an internet connection to tap in, know stuff about them, to understand about what it is they're talking about, whether they reject it, like it, hate it, doesn't matter. You're putting that stuff out there and you're doing that. And, some people do it without thinking about it. I do think the younger generations who have grown up with an internet world are slightly less worried about it. But they've never lived in a world where that stuff is sacred. They also have never benefited from being able to make mistakes that the rest of the world can't see. I hate the fact that I'm getting older. I'm not keen on that. I'm not going to lie. Because I feel a little bit robbed of a certain period of my life. And I'm never, ever going to be ungrateful for the situations that have led me to the point where I'm at. But I'm always thinking, well, this next birthday milestone for me, I wish it was the decade before. I wish I had more time. Now that I really know myself, now that I really understand who I am, I wish that I could live more in this embodiment of who I am than the person who didn't really understand who she was before, which was a massive chunk of my life gone, almost in confusion. And there's a little tinge of shame in that. There's a little tinge of, oh, I wish it was a little bit different. But, you can't control these things and you have to take the gifts in the way that they come. And I was born in a perfect time in terms of I actually was able to get from the ages of 0 to 15, 16 without there being too much technology. There was just enough to keep me nice and occupied. Karaoke machines were invented, thank goodness for that. Movies were great, computers were a thing, but dial-up internet was hard to come by. It was an expensive situation. Computers were big and clunky and expensive, and not everybody had one in their house. And, my teenage experience of the internet kicked in at around probably the right stage for understanding the problems, understanding the fears. So there was MSN chat and, MySpace and those types of things. I'm showing my age now, but that's the type of thing that was happening. And what that means is that around that 14, 15, 16 year mark for me, those teenage years. Was I being taught computers in school? Absolutely. Did I understand computers? Absolutely. So I was blessed with that computer science knowledge from an age where I was able to take that on. Computers for me are not mystified the way that a lot of people that we encounter who perhaps are 15 or 20 years my senior encounter. Okay, so that was really perfect for me. But I still was able to get from, like I said, 0 to 15 before anything that I ever did would be sent around in a text message thread or potentially end up on the internet. Like, that just wasn't a thing. It wasn't something that you needed to worry about ever. So that's the thing for me in the way of like that really perfect timing. Kids these days are being forced to identify themselves much quicker than we've had to try and identify ourselves. Like, I don't remember as a teenage girl ever having to fully explore, and I realise that this is a privilege, by the way. I'm fully aware that this is a privilege. I never had to explore anything that would kind of label me in any kind of terms. I didn't have to come up with a label. The only thing that I had to decide was what I wanted to do for my career, because that was the question that you were asked repeatedly by the adults in your life, whether it be teachers, siblings, parents. What are you going to do as a job? What are you going to do for your career? And it was always stemmed in the idea of, if we know what you want to do, then we can reverse engineer the pathway to that. And if we do that, then we can make sure that you have a stable living situation. And again, I came from a generation of really, really, really working class, and for lack of a better term, generations and generations of being poor, of being just on the breadline. Like my parents lived in that way, not their entire lives. As I got to teenage years, things started to financially improve for them, but my grandparents and their grandparents and their parents and my aunties and uncles on both sides of the families, there wasn't any generational wealth. There was definitely other gifts. There was other generational gifts. Resilience, for instance, was something that I was able to completely make use of. It seems like such a silly thing, but in the lack of resources of financial stability, you do have to find how to tap into resource in other ways. And that is a gift that just keeps giving. And if you have it, it's absolutely amazing. And again, even that in itself, just expressing that to you is a part of my identity. Understanding who I am as a person and making sense of who that person is, where that essence comes from, where all of the little pieces that make me come from, has been absolutely invaluable in being able to be visible, open, and confident for my business, but also for myself as a person, show up for myself as a person. I'm no longer fearful of if somebody doesn't like me. And this might not be breaking news to some, but it might be breaking news to others. I have clients that I've worked with that no longer like me. And all the time people say to me, "Oh, Johnny, you're so lovely. And I think you're great. And you say lovely things to me. And I love it. And I adore you all. And I appreciate the love that we get. But please don't be disillusioned that there isn't people out there who cannot stand me. There are. There's lots of them. They have their own club. They talk about me. And that's okay. It's fine. And if you're one of those people that's in the I Hate Rachel Green Club and you're listening to this, I wish you well. It's not my responsibility to be what everybody else wants me to be. I am one of those people that as I grew up, I lost myself and became what I like to call a chameleon. I realise now that part and parcel of that was to do with my ADHD that hadn't been diagnosed at the time, and that I potentially could be on the spectrum in terms of autism. And masking to be socially accepted is widely understood now. in, you know, like never before. People just get it in a way that they never used to get it. And that's okay. Like, that's an acceptable situation. However, knowing that you give yourself away a little bit more every time you try to be a people pleaser, or knowing that you give yourself away every time you adapt to a situation or a room in order to make other people feel comfortable at the expense of yourself, you are betraying your own identity. Now, it takes a confident person, somebody who is really clear on who they are and what they bring to the table, to be able to say, no, this is me, take me or leave me, this is how I am, without pandering to those societal norms, the unspoken requirements, the unspoken social bonds and contracts that occur between person to person. And it takes the strength of boundaries that most of us could really benefit from, but often take years and years and years to implement for ourselves. And that's something that just baffles me when I think about it now on this side of the coin, because so many years I was willing to give up my identity, to put on a completely different version of myself in order to survive. And we do that, right? We do that in situations where we need to survive. And the survival situation might not be a tiger. The survival situation might not be being held up at gunpoint. It might just be having anxiety and walking into a room of people that you don't know. But these thoughts and feelings are still important to us, because if you can check yourself when you're doing it and recognize when you're doing it, and still find a way to show up in a great way, then you're winning. I always think about those of us, and maybe you felt this way too. I think about those of us that have an excellent social air about us. I know I sound like a big head now, but I do have that 9 times out of 10, and especially when I'm on my best. You can stick me in a room with any group of people. And I say this about my best friend too, because she's the same. You can do the same with her. Stick either of us into a group of people, and within half an hour, we have adapted. We have charmed people in the room. We know who everybody is, what their social dynamic is. We know where we fit, how to continue survival mode during that situation. And as long as we have the social and energetic battery to maintain that level of socialization, you will get this charming, wonderful version of us that just looks effortless for us to be amongst other people and to be working a room. Yeah. And people rely on that skill when they go to all sorts of different in-person events. And this skill is becoming more and more of a useful skill as we move back into being together in actual person rather than doing so on digital. It's so much easier to tap into this for an hour or two on a digital situation. Even now, even as you listen to the tone in my voice on this podcast, there is an element of the excitement and the passion and the truthful, energetic way in which I am putting myself out. And today for me, it's effortless. I'm on a good day, just so you know. But on a day maybe slightly different in my cycle, it might not be, and it might make my social battery drain a little bit more. That social battery, for me, I've had to start showing up even when I'm a bit flat. And I know for people who are natural introverts or ambiverts, as you may identify, You may think that you don't show up in those times. You only show up in your bright and shiny, and when your social battery is out, you go. But actually, where is the harm in the honesty of your identity in being who you truly are? Like, I can still be a kind person. I can still be an interesting person. I can still be a myriad of wonderful things in terms of being company, even when my social battery is a bit low. I think my girls in the office would actually tell you that when my social battery is a bit low or my emotional state is in a weird flux, what I actually am is quite comical. I'm also very comical in a tragedy, like in tragic situations. I am great if something bad has happened. Obviously, not great if the worst things have happened. But like, for instance, my mum was poorly once and needed an ambulance, and she was okay. She was stable, but it was scary. I was like a stand-up comedian. Those paramedics must have thought that they were being secretly filmed for a Netflix special, because this is a trait that I got from my dad. I turned into my dad, and I was just a comedian. I was making everybody laugh. I was making everybody feel at ease. And again, like, you could look at that and you could be like, what a great quality for Donnie to have. And it is, and people feel better. And my mum was, she felt poorly, but even she was laughing a little bit. And it took the essence of fear out of the room a little bit. But what that does in that moment for me is that I am consuming that fear. I am taking that fear out of the room for other people. I still hold it because I'm the one that removed it. I'm the one that's making everybody else around me feel okay, while secretly trying not to fall into the woe is me. And the woe is me internally for me in that moment is, I'm the youngest daughter and I don't know what I'm doing. And I have to hold this down for my sisters who can't be here. And I have to hold this down for my mum because my mum needs somebody. But I'm not sure I'm equipped to deal with this. I can't get away with the younger sister thing for much longer. Like, I'm just going to say I'm in my 30s because I'm not ready to discuss where I'm going this year in terms of age. But I'm in my 30s, and I can't get away with that younger. I'm the baby of the family. I can't get away with that anymore. I'm not a baby, and you just take it on. You do what you have to do. But what if I wasn't the comedy person? What if I wasn't able to consume that fear? What if I wasn't on the top of my game? What if I wasn't falling into whatever my default setting is when it comes to tragedy? Like, what if I was a bit low that day? What if I couldn't hold it up? That's still okay. There's confidence in my identity that me not being the bright and shiny version of myself all of the time doesn't make me any less worthy. And that comes from knowing one's self. When I talk about female hormones, because I am subject to them and therefore they make it onto my podcast and into my emails and into my trainings, can't help it, not sorry. I think often about the understanding of my own physiological situation and how that affects my emotional situation, how that affects my mental situation, my well-being, yada, 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 the whole ripple effect of how that works for me as a functioning human on this planet, right? That's part of my identity. Me being aware of that is part of my identity. To know oneself, to be self-aware on that level, to be really unwavering in who you are as a person. Like, how can you build a boundary if you don't know who you are, what you stand for, and what you will and won't tolerate? Like, how is that even possible? And I didn't know any of those things, and I could not create a boundary. I was not sturdy in my ability to see myself, and then got incredibly upset that the people around me couldn't see me, which is crazy because I had created the situation where they couldn't see me. I had masked myself away so beautifully so that they wouldn't see me. Okay? The radical responsibility in that situation is me actually taking the blame, if you will, for relationships that have not turned out the way that they could have, potentially should have turned out. They never were going to turn out that way because I did not present as myself until my 30s. I feel like there was a hankering of knowing, a deep, deep understanding, but I squashed it. I changed it. I minimized myself out of fear, mainly, and going off bad and outdated information. Like when I was a child, my ADHD and the way that I would present that identity was entirely unacceptable in terms of behavior. I just looked like a giddy child, and that was shut down. So I learned to shut all things down. Again, just potentially not the right way to handle things, but also that lack of understanding in self just wasn't there. I had a really, really fantastic conversation with my daughter a couple of weeks ago, and my daughter is 14, and she and her friends, because of the age that we're in now, they are discussing identity in a way that it was never discussed when I was a teenager. And sometimes I have full-blown conversations with my 14-year-old, and I feel like I'm talking to an adult in her 30s or 40s, because she is so switched on to her own being, her own identity. I'm aware of some masking, but also, like, there's an awareness of masking. Like, nobody was turning around to me at 15 and going, oh, Dawn's a people pleaser, she's masking. Like, nobody was doing that. If anything, people were praising me for getting my giddiness under control, for being able to focus in a way that I hadn't been able to focus, as a younger child, for being organized because I'd had to mask my way into looking like an organized person. And even now, you will look at me and I will tell you about my business, and I will tell you about the podcast schedule and the way that we run our business and how we look after our team and how we make sure all of the client work is on time or early, and quality and our ethos and all of our exciting plans. And you might look at me like, wow, she has got it all together. But you have no idea the mind mess that still even now occurs. And I appreciate that I could medicate, but I'm not gonna. I don't want to. I actually am comfortable in my chaos, which again, part of my identity. And all of these things are incredibly important, deep, 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 deep factors in who you are as a person. And why is that even something that you would need to explore as a business person? Well, 90%, if not more, of the people that listen to me and that are following me and that are taking my advice and using it to their benefit are using some sub-collection of personal brand material when they're showing up for the world and letting people know what it is that they're up to or what they're doing or what their brand is all about. And in order for you to be a personal brand, you have to be real clear, real sure, and real comfortable with who you are. Okay, it's a little bit like going to the gym for 6 months before you take your summer dress off and walk around the beach in your bikini. You want to know that when you take that over dress off and you're wandering around the beach in the bikini, that you feel comfortable because you've done the work. Yeah, you've done the work. You're happy walking around in that itsy bitsy teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikini because you've already done the work. It's the same kind of thing. So if you haven't explored who you are as a person, I will lovingly invite you to do a very quick exercise, which is literally just 10 things. Write yourself a little numerical list, 1 to 10, and then fill in those 10 spots with things about you. Could be something completely random, like I retain movie quotes from my favourite films, or I really like the smell of rain on hot summer days, or I think sunsets are magical, or I prefer cats over dogs, or I love bright colours and strawberries. I don't know. But just explore who you are like a child. Not what you want to do, not who you want to be. We do that all of the time, and this is useful, but who are you? I am the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland on the mushroom asking, who are you? Because the world wants to know. But until you let us know, you have to be sure. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll speak to you next time.
If you're loving our Pretty podcast, come on over to Social Pretties, our online safe house and sisterhood community. It's a safe space where female entrepreneurs connect and thrive in a warm, welcoming fold of pretty amazing women. You'll find an easy redirect in the description, and I can't wait to see you in there. And depending on where you're listening right now, we would love it if you would click subscribe or follow so that you can be the first to know when our new podcasts come out.